Hey there, I'm Sam and I'm here with Pastor Jared, and today we're going to be talking about what is a missional community. Missional community, historically, when people first hear the term, it's extremely confusing, and so we want to make this video to clarify things. So Jared, what is a missional community?
A missional community is a mid-sized family of missionary servants who have committed to making disciples by doing two things: loving one another like a family, and loving a specific area or people group through word and deed.
Okay, so how is a missional community different from a small group? Because that just kind of sounds like a small group to most people.
Sure. And oftentimes people confuse those two. They're definitely not the same thing. And not to go from the negative sense, but small groups tend to gather weekly around a Bible study or an affinity group, whereas a missional community is a people that have shared or common mission together. That meets not necessarily, it's not a meeting. It is a people that are sent by God through the city and in surrounding areas to display the glory of God to people around them.
So we would never say, like, I'm going to missional community tonight.
No,
Okay.
It's not a meeting.
Okay, it's not a meeting. All right, so you don't go to a missional community, you're part of a missional community.
You're part of a missional community.
Right.
Yeah, which gets into the common and shared mission that's
Right.
going to unite or thread people together.
Before we talk about shared mission, can you talk about what is this whole family aspect? Because a lot of people, I call my friends bro that I play basketball, they're not my family, but I call them bro. And is this are we just using that word family?
No, family is part of our identity. So our family is going to be what's united us together, first and foremost, as the family of God. And that we are sent together. We eat together. We play together. We engage our neighbors together. We have birthday parties together. That we get to do it together on mission.
Okay, so a missional community is like a mini family, would you say?
Yes.
Okay. So then that's why you say that we would love each other like a family.
Yes.
And so family spends time with each other, plays together.
That's right. It would be hard to be a pretty solid and
Right.
faithful family if we don't spend much time together.
That's right. Okay. Now, how big is this group? What's this mid-sized community? What are we looking at?
Yeah. Ideally, a missional community would be anywhere in the size of 10 to 20 people. Obviously, it could be larger, but preferably not smaller in order to gain traction together on mission.
Right. So I've heard before that they're small enough to care, so they're not too big where you get lost, but they're big enough to dare.
That's a good.
You like that?
I like that. That's good.
I totally ripped
That's
that
good.
off. Okay, so
That's good.
That's not me.
Copyright or
That's
hashtag
right.
something.
That's right. So okay, well, this missional component, because that is probably going to be the most foreign for most people.
Right.
What is this thing called shared mission?
So shared or common mission is gathering around a particular people or a particular place. And so when I say people, it might be needs of a particular group of people in the neighborhood, the orphan, the widow, the foreigner, a whole number of groups of people. Or it could be around a place like a school, a workplace, or even something completely different.
How do you go about finding what your shared mission will be as a missional community?
Obviously, you want to start in prayer. And you probably want to seek the elders and ask them about maybe clarifying the vision of that missional community, so you can actually gauge to see if it's going to need to be honed down a little bit more than what it is, so it's not so broad, so you can actually meet needs of people in the community.
All right, you said, let me double click on that. You said meet needs. So you said we're gathering around a mission, around a people or a place, like a neighborhood or something. What does that mean that we're gathering around them or we're on mission?
Yeah. So I would say common mission or shared mission is going to be focused. It actually brings people together and says, okay, we're pointed in a particular direction in ways to serve and to meet needs. And when I say meet needs, it's going to be finding out what are the needs of this neighborhood. Is it clothing? Is it shelter? Is it, most importantly, are they going to be able to engage or encounter the living God through this not just experience, but as we experience this together as a family, they'll also get to see what it looks like to be a family.
So it's not just word. We're not just preaching the gospel and evangelizing them alone, but we are accompanying that with deeds.
Right. Yep. So if we hear the word, we also want to live out or do what it says according to James. That it's not enough to just know what the word says, but to also do it. And so we want to know Jesus' commands in Scripture, but also live them out practically, so people can actually see God's love demonstrated all around them.
So, can you give an example to bring a little more flesh to this example of a mission, shared mission for one of your missional communities?
Sure, I could give a couple, but I'll just give one for the sake of time. A school, for instance. Some of the people in the congregation have their children who go to the same school. It might be a middle school, and in that school there are lots of needs who are lower income families who can't afford backpacks or can't afford other essentials for going to school, like food. Even though schools will have food programs, a missional community might say, how can we come alongside this school to bless these families? Whether it's after school tutoring, whether it's helping coach some of these teams afterwards, whether it's finding a safe and adequate place for kids to be in between school hours and time when they're actually go home to be with their families. Now that could be a number of things, but it's a way for people to engage particular children who don't have dads in their lives to encounter other men who actually love Jesus and love them well outside of even their current situation.
That's good. That's good. So a big difference between just a regular small group is when in small group we would typically say like, hey, who are the people in your life? And we'll pray for you to go and share the gospel with them alone. Right. But we are trying to take notes from Jesus's ministry where he does ministry with pairs, with groups. And so together we're doing it.
Right.
Right. And so what's the benefit of doing it together rather than just separately?
Right. Well, and there's two aspects. So you have common mission, but then you have reactive mission. And that's not to minimize, because we're always going to be reacting to people around us.
What does that mean, reactive mission?
Reactive mission, I go to the grocery store to get milk.
Okay.
And I'm going to engage people.
Right.
I pump gas. It's people you see all around you every day. Okay. You're going to engage them in some way. Common mission is going to be more focused together, togetherness. So we're going to have reactive mission. We're not minimizing that, but by coming together as the people of God, we actually have a shared direction of finding ways to bless together, ways to piggyback in a sense off one another and serving people all around.
Let me press into this whole shared mission thing. You mentioned the widow, the poor, the orphan. Why did you say that earlier?
Most importantly, they're often the neglected. Not just in our culture, but historically since the foundation of the world. Right. And if they matter to God, obviously they matter to us. Not to be cliche, but oftentimes they're the people that get swept under the rug. We often miss them in our churches. They're often the largest group of people we don't see. That's
right. And when we talk about meeting felt needs or meeting needs in general, oftentimes people who are rich and wealthy, not only does Jesus say it's hard for them to enter the kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven, but it's harder to meet their needs. And so if we try to emphasize the widow, the poor, the orphan, the foreigner, that gives us many more opportunities to actually demonstrate the gospel in not just word but also deed.
Sure. And that's obviously going to be carried over from a Sunday morning teaching to saying, okay, now how do we display or how do we live this out? So it's not just social justice, which is what often can get minimized with missional communities, because of just social justice and serving people and the gospel is absent. It's not the gospel, and it's actually not a community of people on mission, right? So we want to serve in a way where people actually encounter the living God.
That's good. Can you just some nuts and bolts, like how often does a missional community gather?
Yeah, sure. Ideally, they would gather weekly. For a meal. That's right. Okay. And the meal isn't going to be just sitting around a Bible study, though it could be. It'll be sharing and breaking bread together, barbecue or whatever people are excited to eat. But it's celebrating together. It might be through birthday parties and engaging and inviting neighbors into that, people who they're serving already on a regular basis. So that would be at minimum once a week would be a family meal, so to speak. They would also gather in discipleship groups, which are smaller cohorts, so to speak, where there's more life on life. We'll talk about that more in a little while, but there could be anywhere from 3 to 4 times a week. Obviously, your Sunday gathering, your weekly meal, and it's not just for the saints, but it's also for the skeptics and the sinners alike.
As we wrap this up, can you kind of conclude, like, what would you say is probably the hardest thing about a missional community?
Usually people think it's a lot of time, but what it means is it helps us reevaluate where our time is actually spent. We all have the same amount of time every day and every week. It's just how we use that time for the glory of God rather than for our own ways and means. And so just reevaluating our calendars, we find that there's a lot of time there to love one another, but also to engage our neighbors around us.
That's good. Yeah. So it's like instead of adding extra things onto our schedule, the hope is to how can we sync things that we're already going to do. So,
Exactly.
Yeah, so we use this word rhythm.
Exactly.
Right. So we all eat. So try to get more meals where we're going to eat together.
Right.
Or going to the grocery store, just little things. That's why we talk about making disciples in the everyday stuff of life, not just special, super spiritual events, but the day to day.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, so that wraps up this little video on missional communities. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Just really our heart, we believe that a church with missional communities, if we execute it well, will be a key to making disciples who make disciples in the everyday stuff of life.